The minute you hear them make their very first sound, the minute you even know you're bringing a child into this world, everything changes. I was watching my little girl sleep one night, and she was almost 4 months old. She just looked so peaceful, just so innocent. And there's so much I want to teach her. There's so much life that she's going to experience, and I'm going to be there for all of it. And at that very moment, that everything was so wonderful, I had this immediate scary thought that what if something happens to me tomorrow, in a week, next month, next year, and what if I'm not there? That really, really scared me. With my boys, I was younger, and so there's something about being younger that you don't have as much attention to your mortality. Maybe I didn't. But when I had this little girl, it was 20 years later, and so it was pretty heavy, that realization of my mortality. You know, here's this little girl who's only 4 months old, and if something were to happen to me, I won't have the opportunity to teach her all these things that as I was pregnant, envisioned teaching her all these wonderful things about life and even some of the challenges that she's going to face in life. And I immediately thought, I have to do something. I have to leave something for her. I can leave a journal for her. And then I thought, well, that's not going to work. And so I thought, maybe I'll write a really long note. I know that's still not quite right. There's just too many things that I want to be able to talk to her about and hold her and hug her through all of these things. And so instead of questioning any longer how I was going to do it, I just did it. I just started to write. She was laying next to me, actually sleeping. And the very first thing I thought, what are the things that I want most for her to know? Things about her character.
Always being grateful.
Being loyal.
Always using her manners. Being compassionate to other
Understanding
people.
that everyone has feelings just like
being
her.
determined that no matter what anybody told her, patient.
Being able to share challenges she faced.
Just keep going.
All of these things were just so important. I wrote and I wrote. They just poured out of me. So the very first story, I wrote the story Words, because words have so much power. And once they're out, you can't take them back. Think about how those words are going to affect other people. But then I realized beyond that, it's not just the words she uses to other people. I want her to also make sure that she's kind to herself. This story even goes into that for our children. And so I continued to write. And before I knew it, I realized that I had basically written an entire collection on values. I had written 10 individual stories, all about 10 individual values. And for the next 4 nights after that, I kept going. I wrote for 5 nights straight, and I started to write about emotions because knowing that she was going to face conflict, she was going to feel sad some days, she was going to feel worry. I wanted her to know how to recognize them for what they were and how to be able to process through them. Then I started thinking, there's other things here that I need her to know. I visualized her someday coming home from school and saying, Mom, I don't like this thing about me. Just having that vision, I wrote the story called Unique. And then I went on to write a story called Peer Pressure, because I think that as parents, sometimes we fail to realize that they're going to face it, whether we talk about it or not. So why wouldn't we talk about it? With every story I wrote, I felt better and better, that I was becoming prepared, that she was going to be okay. And that's why I kept writing, because I just had to get it all out. I had to tell her everything that I could possibly think of at that moment to make sure that she would be better than okay. Loved by her mother, even if her mother wasn't here. Once I was done writing the stories, all of them, and there were a lot of them, there were 38 of them, I read them all to my husband. And he was remarkably quiet for quite some time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And do you remember being really quiet for a while?
Yeah, I do. And I
then-
sat on the chair.
Uh-huh. And what did you say?
I just said that you need to share that with the world.
You said, these were your words exactly, I'll never forget it.
See, how do I...
I'll never forget. You said, you sat there very, very quietly, which freaked me out, because I was like, he hates them. And then you said, your eyes got really big, and really solemnly you said, you have to share these. You can't just keep these for our daughter. That's what you said.
And look now.
First instinct was no, there's no way I'm sharing these. These are so personal. The idea of sharing them left me feeling very, very scared. And my husband looked at me and said, listen, you wrote these for our daughter to help her through her life. But what if you could do that for millions of children? And I realized, you're right. You're absolutely right. I could do that. So once I decided to share these stories, I knew I could not do it alone. I needed to find a team, and I needed to do it quick. And so I immediately got to work. I searched out an editor, I searched out an illustrator, and it has been almost 3 years now that these stories have been in the works. 3 years, over 38 stories, probably isn't too bad, I don't think. I was just so determined to make sure that these got out in the world at that point that nothing was going to stop me. And so it was countless hours, countless nights. It's extended into years, building and creating, shaping and molding and preparing for other people, other families to read them and share them. And that feeling is overwhelmingly amazing, because when I wrote them, that wasn't even a thought. And so to know that other moms like me, other dads like my husband, grandparents, anyone for the love for a child is going to read these words that poured out of my heart for this little baby girl. That was incredible, and it was going to take a lot of work. So this is really where you come in. We need to be able to keep going. We need to be able to bring these stories completely to life. And really, they have the power, I know they do, to affect the lives of so many children. All of our children are going to go through the same exact life experiences, one way or the other. They will all go through the same thing, boy or girl. And so every one of these stories is going to be able to touch the lives and help so many different families. And this is really where we need your help. I made a promise, though, to myself and to my daughter. Well, she didn't understand a word of it at the time because she was still young, but I promised I wouldn't change a word, not a single word, of what I'd written for her. It would be the story just as I wrote it for her, because that's the love in these stories. And if they're going to be shared, the love's going with them.